Howdy, folks. Happy Monday. Well, it's barely happy for me because it's always pleasurable to do a podcast or a webcast after you've had major dental surgery, and I'm in that situation this morning because I had an implant done on my mouth, and let's just say I'm so loaded up with Tylenol and Aleve that I don't think if somebody shot me, I would feel pain. But okay, we'll bring on King Richard Brodeur here in his Flying V, but we'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
Yeah, quick mention about why I dislike the DH coming into the National League. Now that the DH is in the National League, guess what? Albert Pujols, who was like 3 for 17 in the playoffs last year, coming off the bench, is getting another year. Robinson Cano, who's been washed up for about 2 years now, but missed baseball completely last year because of PEDs, is going to be the Mets DH. If real players were to play DH, like, hey, this guy just can't field, but he's a great athlete, he can run, he's a young player, I'd be more open to the position. But this position, and it may turn into that over time, but this is exactly like 1973 all over again. Anybody who's washed up or has a bad contract or whatever in the National League is going to be DHing, and I hate it.
But there's a history, Kev, of this. Russ and I are doing a series of articles on like the top 10 outright fielders, top 10 center fielders of all time, and
Mike left out K-Line. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I didn't. Please. Actually, it's funny. It's funny. On that top 10 list, there are 3 Tigers: Sam Crawford, Harry Heilman, and K-Line. So, but no, Suzuki went back to Seattle at the end of his career when he was well past his prime. Reggie Jackson went back to Oakland the last year of his career when he was well past his prime. So there's a history of the players going back. But Pujols, yeah, he's about washed up.
Yeah, but it's a chance really to kind of hang on to the Stars. Like, I don't see that it's a horrible thing, and to be honest, I think it's mostly the lateness of the hour for the NL, as opposed to not having a battle plan. But if you look at the American League, oftentimes that DH, not every team has one DH. They rotate it around, they use it to work people into the lineup. And I think that's what'll happen in the NL as well. I think this is kind of an aberration as they kind of sort through, how that's all going to work. And it just doesn't occur to them that you can move it around, and it gives you a lot of versatility if you utilize it in that regard.
And this is a big PR move for the Cardinals because Molina is probably retiring at the end of the year. Wainwright may be retiring, so you're bringing back the core group of the team that won a World Series. Now, I have to talk about this because I worked at a movie theater for 10 years. I've always been a movie buff, and one of the nights I always look forward to is the Oscars. And the last few years, it's been, I mean, especially during COVID, but even before that, it's getting to be sort of a sideshow. Well, it was the Jerry Springer show last night.
I saw that.
Now, okay.
My son, who hates anything like this, is dating a girl who was holding an Oscar party. It was really funny. And so he had to go, and he hates these things. So he told me about it. Go ahead, continue, Mike.
Well, okay. So first of all, everybody thought it was a skit. Everybody thought it was fake.
Right.
It wasn't fake. The joke that Chris Rock told, that was from what the indications are, he didn't know that Jada Pinkett Smith had some alopecia, which is losing the hair. So she's shaved her head.
Yeah.
And he made not an offense. Believe me, I've heard offensive jokes. If Ricky Gervais was on this, he would have been assassinated because of the stuff.
I believe you, Mike. You have heard offensive jokes. I believe that.
Yeah, but he ripped Mel Gibson. Tina Fey ripped James Cain. All these. So it was not an overly offensive joke. He says, "I'm looking forward to G.I. Jane 2," which is
right.
Okay.
A Demi Moore movie back in the day.
Demi Moore movie from like 25 years ago, obscure reference. And Will Smith goes on stage and, slaps him right across the face and then loses his mind and mouths off and drops the F-bomb and says, "Don't mention my wife's name." Yeah. And then 15 minutes later, he wins Best Actor and he's making this. Now, this is the thing. I've always liked Will Smith. I've always liked him as an actor, as a star. He seemed like a guy in interviews that was a nice guy.
As a person too, as a good guy.
Tell me, Kev, that this not destroys his career, but this will take a big chunk out of his career, because I'm sorry, that was unjustified. And there are some people who think he should be charged with assault.
Well, yeah, I don't know how people missed that. The police were called in that. It was in most news stories, but apparently people never got down to that part of the news story. Police were called, but Chris Rock declined to press charges.
Right.
So that's why that never moved out. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to destroy his career, but it's certainly going to be the asterisk on his career. I mean, everyone's always going to talk about it. And he apologized, obviously not to Chris Rock,
right?
Because I think he felt justified. But I found it fascinating, the reaction to all that. Denzel, Washington came down and talked to him about it. The producer came out and talked to
Bradley,
to the wife, right? Yeah, so. I think people realize that, it just looked horrible, and you can't justify what he did whatsoever. I mean, I understand that he was upset and he was defending his wife and all that, but, is that how we have to react with violence?
No,
right.
But here's something else that was missed.
Yeah.
Something else that was missed is, how is he allowed to stay in the building, especially after mouthing off from his seat?
Well,
he should have been removed from the building, whether he is going to be a winner or not.
And this is the thing, Russ.
And I like Will Smith too, for the record.
Yeah, I've seen it reported that there are rules that the Academy has about physical confrontations during the ceremonies, that they could say, we want the Oscar back, you will never be allowed at the ceremonies again. And yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think
But they should have kicked him out on the spot.
I agree.
I'm surprised that he and Chris Rock and he just haven't gotten together and held the press conference together and say, this was a really bad mistake. I didn't realize what was going on. And
Well, Chris Rock may not want to do that.
There might be something deeper with the two of them. You never know.
Right.
But, I know Will Smith. I don't know Will Smith, but I know people who know Will Smith really well. He's from Philadelphia. I'm a very big fan of his.
I like
his nature documentary just recently was amazing.
But can you answer me why he wasn't kicked out of the venue?
Because he was going to win Best Actor. That's why.
So now we're learning in real
life. I think at the end of the day, that's what people.
Yeah, but you could defend your wife in a movie theater. The minute you hit somebody, you're going to be removed from the movie theater.
Yeah, you could defend your wife at the Vanity Fair party and
right.
I think that's why.
Well, I thought it was interesting what the comedians had to say about this.
Oh yeah,
because their concern is that this now gives license to everyone at every comedy show, to go up and attack comedians if they think he's crossed the line. And what's coincidental to this? I'd actually read an article where they interviewed Chris Rock about how difficult it is to be a comedian in this politically correct world. Yes. And he said, you've got to kind of figure out, if you should respect a line, if there is a line, where the line is at, how far you're willing to go. And he said it's really, really complicated. And he said, I want to be respectful of some political correctness, certainly, but I also want to be funny. So,
right. I mean, the minute you invite comedians, Kev, these kinds of jokes are going to occur. And if as a public person like Will Smith, hey, you may not like the joke, but you're sitting within range of all these comedians, somebody's going to say something about you.
I thought it was interesting, though. I saw a couple of comedians that made the reference about, he said, it's commonplace, as Mike pointed out, at the Oscars to go after people. But you said you go after them for bombs of movies or things of that nature. He said usually medical issues are out of bounds.
Well, that's the thing. Supposedly he didn't know.
Yeah, well, he's never come out and talked about it, so we don't really know what he did.
Not yet.
They can come out.
But this is the thing. It's like, like I said, Ricky Gervais left a glass of beer on the podium for Mel. When Mel Gibson was the next guy. And Mel Gibson made a joke about seeing Ricky made him remind himself that he had to have a colonoscopy. It's like if Will Smith had said a joke after, like in the acceptance speech, that would have been acceptable. That would have been fine. Just one more thing, and then we'll get off the Oscar and talk about hockey. Okay, I love The Godfather. I love Coppola and De Niro and Pacino, but to wheel them out. It's like it was I think it's the 50th anniversary of The Godfather. They made them talk, and like they're barely at least Pacino and Coppola, they're barely coherent, and Liza Minnelli doing the Best Picture, and they brought her out in a wheelchair. I mean, I don't know. Like it makes me feel uncomfortable to see it. Maybe that's just my issue, but it was really bizarre. But
I didn't see it, so I don't know.
All I can say is this:
I didn't see it either.
I used to look forward to the Oscars. Now I will be looking to avoid it.
I avoided it 100% until somebody put in our group about this thing happening. Otherwise, I was blissfully ignorant the entire evening.
Yeah, that was me. I was watching it. So
yeah, I don't think I've seen one in maybe ever. I don't think I've ever watched the Oscars, but I just think it is one of those things. But here we go. Ready?
Yep.
All right, let's do it. The date is. It's called checking, kids. This is what journalists do. All right, here we go. Hello, Hockey World. It is Monday, March 28th, 2022.
I'm Michael Agello, and I promise I will never slap Eck.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology, and rest in peace, Taylor Hawkins.
Yes.
Kevin Allen, Hockey Buzz.
Anna Meckland and Mike, you got to catch me to hit me. So you're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And it just got closer this weekend. Like the Western Conference just got closer. We're going to talk about that. And we're also going to get into what my log is today, which is what is the best worst team in the NHL? Because we have 10 teams with a minus 25 goal difference, minus 25 or greater goal differential right now, which is really, really crazy. It
is crazy.
I follow goal differentials, and you have usually at this point in the season you might have 5. To have 10 teams minus 25 goal. that's a lot of bad teams. And so I want to talk about who's the best of the bad teams in a little bit. Which one of those bad teams could we maybe see in the playoffs next year? But we'll get to that as a little teaser. But first, I know you guys wanted to talk about a couple things. You wanted to talk about the Vegas Golden Knights. Russ, you put the Vegas Golden Knights out there.
Just put that in there to chide you, but they are still in the playoffs. I get that the games in hand are there, but in the end, you do have to win like 90% of those games in hand to have it matter. So I still think they're going to stay in it. I know it's easy to just say, I think they're going to fall out of it. I actually think Mike is right, though, Eck. And I do think the Oilers will probably be the ones to fall out of it because their goaltending is starting to really cave in on them now.
Yeah. But here's the thing about the Oilers, in my opinion. And Mike, Mike is right. It's not something I'm willing to say at this point. But because the reality is that I know they got killed in the Battle of Alberta, which is a very public game, to give up 9 goals in that game. But
it's like a flogging.
But before that, they've had a couple months of relatively decent goaltending, honestly, and they really have. A month. I mean, they
had a month of decent goaltending. Yeah,
it's like this. He went 0-6-1, then he went 6-0-1.
Right
now. So
and then he gets killed. Kevin, what are your thoughts on that? Kev, did we lose you? Kevin cannot hear us.
He's in the cone of silence.
Kevin, can you hear us? Okay, all right, we'll go back to that. We lost you, Kev. Are you there? I think he's lost his volume.
I'll take him off screen for a minute because I think he's having
lost his volume. Yeah, you're back. Tell us when you're back.
There we go.
Are you back? Okay, sorry, right. Kev. I wonder.
I lost. You guys were spinning. So,
something we do.
Here's what I have to say about that race. I think it's an incredible race. I find it fascinating. The Winnipeg Jets of the last 10 games, I think, have played as well as anybody. They've gotten themselves in. I think they're 7-3 in their last 10. The Oilers actually have played better than some of those teams too. They're 6-3-1, I think. In their 10. So they're in it. Like I wouldn't really want to predict that. I think it's just going to be one of those flip of the coin type things that. The St. Louis Blues haven't played all that well. recently as well in terms of wild card. So,
well, the Krug
it's
injury might hurt them.
Yeah, for sure. So
now the thing is, okay, Dallas has got games in hand on Edmonton, on everybody. So does St. Louis. They've only played 64 games, so those games have to play out. It's just heck. I mean, the thing is that even if it had been a lateral move, Edmonton didn't address the goaltending, and we know that the reason why. Maybe he was, if the rumor out there is true that Jarmo Kekalainen was asking for 2 draft picks for Korpisalo, I understand Ken Holland not wanting to be held hostage, but I think you needed to show that team that you recognize that the goaltending was an issue. And, and the only thing that the Edmonton Oilers did was add Brett Kulak, who's a bottom pairing depth defenseman. So really they said, okay, we've made our moves. Our move was bringing in Evander Kane. We brought in Duncan Keith during the offseason. We're going to go with these guys. We don't think Stuart Skinner is ready to be in goal. That's just not enough. Again, I keep going back to this, Russ. I keep going back to, Draisaitl's got 47 goals. Connor McDavid is one of the best players in the league, and they have a 50-50 shot of missing the playoffs.
It is a remarkable thing. If we really think about it, like if they just had a little bit above average NHL goaltending, how good would they really be? Like this is a drag on them. Like it really is. They should be so much better than this.
I know, and I've heard a lot about different reasons why they didn't go for goaltending. They have actually tried to get goaltending a couple times in the last couple of years and it hasn't worked out.
Yeah,
I mean, that's been public out there.
They tried to get Fleury and he didn't want to go.
Tried to get Varlamov. Apparently, that didn't work out.
They tried to get Markstrom in free agency. Yeah,
they Markstrom in free agency. Yeah, so they just and sometimes it just doesn't work out right when you go after a guy. So that is also playing. And I do know that the 2 goalies they have now, while not very, I mean, I think Smith is probably the more consistent one. But Koskinen is probably the better upside, but also the worst downside. So it's like, it's a really tough, it's a really weird situation. Like there's moments when Koskinen looks great. And then there's moments when Koskinen really looks terrible. I mean, he's just so big.
I mean, I know his teammates like him because I've heard him speak publicly, but there's a point where they do get like annoyed. And I saw that recently, and I'm sure.
Yeah, they like him, and they really like Mike Smith too. I was told that recently that Mike Smith is a super popular player on that team. Like runs all the social things that they do, and is like the guy.
I've almost forgotten that Smith played pretty well last year's season.
Yeah, he did. He did.
So I mean, you never know. Like, I think they should have gotten a goalie as well. I've said that all along. But saying all that, I mean, they got a shot to get in the playoffs. But what does that really mean? Even if they get into the playoffs. Yeah. Do they have a goalie that can carry them long term? Although I think the West is a little more forgiving.
I think that 2-3 matchup might be the best matchup for them to be in. Like that West, whoever they end up playing in that West there, if it's LA, if it's Vegas, if it's Dallas, if it's
Okay,
go
ahead, Kev.
Well, just contrast though, Connor McDavid and Draisaitl, what they've gone through in Edmonton to Sidney Crosby and Alex Ovechkin. Sidney Crosby does a wonder every year whether he's going to be in the playoffs. And, Ovechkin's team has been competitive for a long time as well. And, Draisaitl and Connor McDavid, here we are again. Will they make it? Won't they make it? They might make it. But, it's just, to be – and like Connor McDavid's now played 500 games in the NHL. It's not like he's a spring chicken,
No.
And that's my assertion. Yeah. The 2 best play. I know this is not it's not like basketball where you have 2 or 3 stars and they carry your team. It's a team sport. I get that. But the fact that you have 2 of the best players in the league and they can't, they lose to Chicago in the bubble. They make 1 round in the playoffs and they lose to Winnipeg last year. They lose to the only time they've advanced past the first round was when they lost to Anaheim a few years ago. This team should be better than that with those players around there. At least you can say, Toronto makes the playoffs every year. They don't have any success, but they make the playoffs every year. And that's the thing. It's like, I think it's a waste. And that's why I wonder how long this is going to last.
A really interesting thing just happened. They did name the 3 stars of the week. And the first star is fascinating.
No.
Did you guys see this yet? Do you know who the first star is?
I have not seen it. No.
All right. The first star with a 3-0 record with a 1.33 goals against average and a .959 save percentage is, including 1 shutout, is
Ilya Sorokin.
Cam Talbot.
Oh, Cam Talbot. There you go.
So Cam Talbot, 3-0, 133 goals against, .959 save percentage after they trade for Marc-Andre Fleury. All this happens after that. This is Monday, Tuesday, and last night's game.
Yeah.
In those 2 games, or Monday, Wednesday, last night's game, I guess it was. He played in all 3 of those games. Fleury played the 1 game in the middle there on Saturday night, I guess it was, beating Columbus. They won all 4 games. Minnesota did since getting Fleury, which is good. But Cam Talbot, I think we've seen this before, Russ, like on the Rangers and stuff like that. I've always believed Cam Talbot's better when he has somebody pushing him.
No, I agree. Yeah.
That he's better when there's another good goalie in the system and he gets his competitive juices going a little bit more.
Yeah.
And that's all fine. And good. But when game 1 of the playoffs starts, who do you think is going to start?
We have a long way to go. I think that's what we have to say.
I know.
But I think and if Cam Talbot continues like this or whatever,
they're still going to go with Fleury.
They're going to go with Fleury. They traded a 1st-round pick for him, Mac.
Well, no, it's not if he's player of the week or player of the month.
He could be player of the millennium. They're still going with Fleury in game 1 of the playoffs.
Yes.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I'm with Kevin.
I think if they work him in and they're rotating, then the answer is yes. But if they ride a hot hand with Talbot and Fleury's playing every 4th game or 5th game, I think they'll think about it. So,
The only reason I don't think it will happen, Kev, is because Marc-Andre Fleury is not made to be on the bench and then all of a sudden come in and do well. He's never done well with that. He hasn't had to do it much in his career to begin with. It would be a big risk.
It was a problem in Pittsburgh when Matt Murray was there. And when he was given the ball to run with, when Murray got hurt or Murray was not playing well, then that's when he had success. But and in Vegas with Leonard, I mean, it was always So yeah,
I think the goal, the original plan had been to play Talbot on Monday because Talbot had 3 straight wins. So after they get Fleury, he's not going to play Monday night anyway. But then they planned on playing Fleury on Wednesday. But because Talbot gets the shutout on Monday, they play Talbot again on Wednesday. Talbot plays well, but then they go to Fleury. I think, and that kind of messed everything up because I think the plan was, Fleury would be Wednesday and Sunday, Talbot would be Monday and Saturday. They would split the 2, but that all changed because they had back-to-back games and Fleury plays on Saturday and then Talbot has to go back on Sunday. So I think it's great. It's a great problem to have if you're the Wild. I mean, you can sit back and talk about, and some of my Wild friends are like freaking out. I'm like, it's not a freak out situation here. There's
a couple of things in play here. It's not a normal situation because it isn't like Bill Guerin went out and sort of was maverick and said, I got to get this goalie, and the owner says, well, you better know what you're doing. That's not the case here.
Right.
Everybody was part of all this.
Yep.
So I think that it's a little bit easier to go with the hot goalie. I think Russ is right. I think it's likely they will go with Fleury because, if you bring him in, you're going to do that. But, the tradition of whoever is playing well has to trump everything. If they watch Fleury and he's not as sharp and Talbot is playing like he did last week, then I think it's possible Talbot could start the playoffs.
I mean, I think it would be a quick hook if they went with Talbot in the playoffs.
Oh, it definitely would be a quick hook.
Yeah, for sure. But I don't think it's impossible for.
It kind of reminds me. Well, the best. I think the best example would be like Grubauer and Holtby back in the day. Remember,
I was going to say under Jacques Lemaire in Minnesota when you had Rolison and Manny Fernandez, he would go move them in and out like game after game because neither one was a number one. But
it was apparent, like in Washington, that Holtby was the playoff goalie. He should be the playoff goalie, but Grubauer had the better season.
Holtby did not have a good year that year. But
but ends up winning the Stanley Cup. Like it was like
and coming in the second game.
Coming in the second game and never looking back. It was like the crazy thing about that. Or the third game. Was it the third game, I think?
Maybe the third. Yeah, maybe it was the third game.
They were down 2-0.
So third game, yes.
And because that's the third game where they're playing Columbus and they go to overtime and Washington's almost down 3-0 in the first round. But because they win in overtime.
we don't have a race in the East in the sense of, as much as Zach wants to say, by the way, there you go. As much as, but the top 8 in the East, that race is going to be really fascinating. And, I have to say this, if you're a Leaf fan, there is no team more infuriating than the team that you root for, because they beat Florida, who's one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the league, not convincingly, but they beat them on home ice. They played well. They got good goaltending from Mrazek. That following that, that was the day after. They can't beat the worst team in the league in the Habs. They outshoot them 51-18. It's like they get stoned by Jake Allen. They got stoned by Carl Vamelka in Arizona. Here's the perfect illustration. Here's the reason why Leaf fans are driven crazy by their team. Since January 1st, they've played the Sabres twice, the Canadiens twice, and the Coyotes twice, and they're 0-6. They're 0-5-1. They've lost, and that's the difference between them finishing in 3rd place or being atop that division. And I don't know how anybody can have confidence in that team in the way that they play, because they're so schizophrenic, up and down. They can't play. They can't beat the bad teams, and you have to beat the bad teams to be a team that finishes.
That game last night against Florida, to be fair, was Florida's 3rd game in 4 nights. I've watched a lot of this. I watched Florida play. Florida played Montreal, Ottawa, and Toronto in 4 nights, and they looked exhausted, like, to me, in that game. And even then they pulled the goalie with like 5 minutes left on Toronto and kept the puck in the zone for the entire time. I mean, it was pretty crazy.
It was Toronto's 3rd and 5 nights. They played back to back, so the fatigue was almost on par.
Yeah. Okay. So and they hadn't met yet this year, right? That was the first time.
Talk about Kev. Talk about scheduling craziness. It's March 27th last night, and the Leafs are meeting the Panthers for the first time. They're playing 3 times in the final month of the season. I mean, I know in the NFL, they have scheduling where divisional matchups, they play them at the beginning of the year and they play them at the end of the year, but they don't usually don't wait till halfway through the schedule to play them twice. I mean, that's just nuts.
Yeah, it is. The schedule's been so wacko this year.
Sure.
The last couple of seasons. Although, I was listening to the game, and now I don't remember what game it was, but, Eck was going into the now traditional diatribe about, God, how exhausted it is you are when you have to play 3 games in 4 nights. That's 3 times where your top forwards will play 20 minutes and everything else. And then I was listening to the game the other day, and they were lamenting the fact that the team had sat idle for 3 days, and they're going on like, how can you come in and maintain your intensity when you're off that long? So which is it, guys?
Right. You can't have it both ways.
Yeah,
there's an answer.
Really becomes
every other day guys. There's no question about that. The playoffs, when they're every other day, that's what they like. That's the rhythm they enjoy.
It's just really ridiculous, though. Guys ought to be able to, and I bring this up all the time because it's my own personal crusade. But brain surgeons, police officers, firemen, people who play much more mentally exhausting professions. We don't say, well, if they got to go 4 or 5 days in a row, a brain surgeon may have to, a pilot, and they give them rest and everything else. But, you still got to work every day. Like, I don't know why we make such a big deal on, the goalie. I could see, he's out there with a lot of equipment, but the rest of these guys, I mean, they're in incredible physical condition.
Yeah,
so,
no, they are. See, to me, it's almost the opposite.
To me, it's become a mental thing. It's become almost a crutch.
Heck, I have 2 things to say about the Leafs. One, I will continue to be right about Ilya Mikheyev, and Mike will continue to be wrong about him as he continues to score goals.
I'm not wrong about him, Russ. When he scores 7 goals last year, like I said, he couldn't put the puck in Lake Ontario if he was.
That was a year ago, Mike.
Right. And he broke his thumb this year, and he's come back, and he's on a salary drive because he's a UFA at the end of the year. That motivation sometimes makes a difference.
A salary drive doesn't all of a sudden make you a goal scorer. It doesn't. Well, he always had goal scoring in him. It's finally coming.
He's having good puck luck this year. Yeah.
It's a little more than puck luck. But anyhow, The other assertion that I feel deep down is the only team I could pick the Leafs against would be the Carolina Hurricanes, and it's only because of my distrust of Freddie Anderson. Otherwise, I can't pick them in the playoffs in the first round.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
but don't you think that the East, when you look at that East, like I don't want to play anybody.
No,
Yeah.
nobody wants to play anybody. I agree with you on that.
Yeah, I mean, like the big beneficiary of the trade deadline, in my opinion, was the fan bases of people that are going to watch Eastern Conference playoffs, because I think they're going to be. Everybody was good to begin with, and then everybody got a little better.
Yeah, and it's a fun time to be like a like when if your team's out of it, just to watch hockey in general, because of all it's fun to watch all the players, on their new teams, like the early return, like to just finish off the Fleury thing for a second. The early return on Fleury and Giroux, was kind of fun to watch. Like, like Giroux goes in there and he looks nervous. I mean, we've seen Giroux play in almost all those 1,000 games. He looked nervous to me for Florida, playing with Barkov. So he's taking the face off and playing the wing. Very similar situation he had with Couturier. Yep. But even with Couturier in the beginning, it took a while to figure that out. That's not the easiest thing to do.
He's got 20 games to settle in.
I know, but you can see how good he's going. I mean, he has 5 points in 3 games. He's not. We're not talking about anything like he's not terrible. But the reality is, he's going to be a lot better once he figures out his defensive assignments with Panthers. There's little things he's doing. Fleury, watching that Columbus game with Fleury, that building, and I talked to people in that building. The Wild were home all week. Like, they played all their games. All their games were at home. There's all 4 of those games, I think. The Wild played those 4 games at home. And that building, though, when Fleury's in goal, the electricity in that building was another thing that happens that I love about the trade deadline. Like the Wild haven't, like, as I wrote in my blog yesterday, the Wild aren't a team that's had a lot of nice things over their years. Like, a lot, like the fans aren't like, we buy a lot of, we don't buy a lot of nice cars. We don't have a nice sofa, but the Wild got a nice thing in Marc-Andre Fleury. Their fans got like, this is a Hall of Fame goalie you got. And those fans were acting like they got a nice thing. They were enjoying every second of it.
And with every move that every team made, it's going to take a little time for these players to settle in. I mean, Giordano, I think he's provided a lot of stability with the Leafs on their blue line. I think he's already paid dividends. He's not going to score a ton of points, but he's just an experienced veteran guy, and they need him to play 18, 19, 20 minutes, and he can do that. But I heard I think it was Ray Ferraro mentioned this, and I want to see if everybody buys into this premise, because I'll just say I don't. Ferraro said because of the compacted schedule, because of the way the league has been this year, the offense is up, that he believes that type of style of game will carry into the playoffs. Whereas, Kev, I think every year it gets tighter. The penalties get tougher to get called. It's going to be that type of rough and tumble, not goonish, but rough and tumble, physical, 3-2, 2-1 playoff type of games. And the teams that are built to play that style are going to win, and the teams that are not going to.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it doesn't, like, it's not that, the coach makes an announcement in the dressing room, we're going to play playoff hockey now, everybody.
Right.
But it just, because everything becomes so important,
right.
That everybody just, and the grinders know this is our time, they know that. And because of that, they play a little bit harder, they hit a little bit harder, everybody gets a little more sore. Everybody's got to pay a price that, sometimes, in a 6-2 game, you may not clear the crease with the same, dedication that you do in the playoff game. So, I just think it just kind of happens. But I agree with you, Mike. I mean, it will be that kind of game that no matter what you do, and I don't think, the compacted schedule is going to impact how guys play in the postseason.
No, and I think, and a lot of teams got more physical as it went along. A lot of teams have added some physicality. Like, I do the little Delorier pickup by Minnesota. Yeah. Has proven to be pretty.
Oh, it's a great pickup. We loved it.
It was kind of like a minor trade deal in the trade deadline scheme of things, but it really he adds a lot to that. He adds a lot of gumption to that team, and he is the kind of player who just, like, on the bench, he's such a vibrant type guy, and he really just, like, people want to follow him. He's like the kind of guy you want to go to war with. You look at, and I've really never watched him as closely as I watched him this past week, just to see what it would be like. So I've been trying to write articles about how the players who were traded make impacts, and he's definitely one that's really kind of fascinating. So I wanted to get into this.
One last thing, just because Mike flashed that thing up on the screen, I want to point out Mikheyev's played 129 games. Everybody's acting like what they saw the last 2 years was like a long, toiling career. He's 27 years old. He is getting better. Players get better, Mike.
Ross, he played 6 years in the KHL.
But what does that mean? Coming to North America, the KHL has nothing to do with it.
I'm telling you, he is what he is, and he's nothing more than that.
Right. Okay.
I'm with you, Russ. I would take him. I would take him in a second. I would.
I would too.
This is the thing. I'm not saying he's not a good player. I'm just saying he's like, this is a prototypical salary drive, and the person in the chat said it. This is be a classic overpaying. Somebody's going to pay Ilya Mikheyev $4 million. And I feel sorry for that team because I don't think he's a $4 million player. Is he a $2.5 to $3 million player? Sure. But that $1 million is the difference between being able to sign somebody else and losing somebody. So
that's your overpay? You're worried about $1 million? I thought you were going to say like he's worth $2 million and someone's going to pay $5 million, like Ferland or something.
He's not a $5 because I think other general managers in this league recognize what I'm saying, Russ. They recognize he has. Up until this year, he has had stone hands. Now, all of a sudden, he's a goal scorer.
If I'm Seattle, I'm all over that.
Absolutely.
Like because you give him a role.
He's scoring shorthanded goals too. You need players like that. You give him a
role. You give him some responsibility. You give him some confidence. Because when you watch him, the eye test is all there with him. Like
he's
got size, he's got speed, he's got
speed, he's got smart.
And those guys take longer, Mike. That is a proven fact. You're going with your snake-bitten Leafs truisms that don't always hold true.
No, I'm going with what I see.
No, you're falling back on history of the Leafs and bad GMs and bad contracts, which has nothing to do with this guy.
Okay, Jason Blake.
See, how many years ago is Jason Blake?
2007.
Yeah.
You proved my point. Thank you.
That's a long time ago, man. When Mike and I did the old talk show, Jason Blake was a star on that show. We talked about him every day.
He was a good player and a constant annoyance if you were rooting against him.
And it worked out bad for the Islanders when he left. It worked out bad for the Leafs when he went there. It worked out bad for everybody.
He scored 40 goals the year before he went free agent. So, I don't know. Let me just touch on this before we can move on. Right. Russ, the Frozen Four next week, Denver versus Michigan, Minnesota versus Minnesota. Is it Minnesota State Mankato?
Yes.
Okay. I know that you were at some of the games, and I watched, especially focusing on the Leafs, focusing on Matthew Nyes. But Michigan, holy mother.
Yeah, they have moments where, like any other team, you could get back in a game, you could catch them. Luke Hughes over-handling the puck a little bit because he's a freshman. You could find these moments, but the problem is these other teams are just getting close. And the minute they get close, if they make one mistake, Michigan just does them in because they have too much talent. Like
the Arizona Coyotes, Russ.
Did what?
Could they beat the Arizona Coyotes?
No, I don't think so. But it would be close. I think it would be close, but I don't think so. But like the coach of Quinnipiac yesterday pulled the goalie with 3 minutes to go, and the problem is when you have skaters like Hughes and Bernier's on that team, you can't like lose the puck once or that game's going to be over. He really should have waited until like a minute to go because they had the momentum. But you just, you gave Michigan that opportunity. When the coach for AIC, when he said that Michigan, this may be the best team, he said 5 years from now, we may all be talking about how this was the best team ever put together in college hockey history. I have to agree with him. I mean, it's the best one I've seen. And you're going to be hard pressed to beat them because they just have so many different ways they can beat you. And it's funny. They had the fewest seniors. A lot of teams have a lot of seniors. I think they have 2, maybe 3. And most of the hardened college hockey people at the beginning of the year when I was saying I really do like Michigan, they were like, this isn't the formula that wins in college hockey. But, I think when you have this overwhelming talent group here that it is the way you could win. And so
right down the street from you. Is there
Yeah.
a buzz? Is there a buzz about them around your area?
There's certainly a buzz in Michigan about them. There was an interview this week, and it was kind of interesting because they alluded to what Russ brought up about the fact that, they're really underclassmen.
Yes.
Off the last draft, there was 4 players, and yet it feels like this is a senior team. Like, we've got to win because we'll never go this way again.
Right.
This will be the last time. So it's a real kind of different, unique feeling what they have on this team. I mean, the feeling is most of the top players are gone. So
they're going to lose 10 players.
It's sort of like the Fab Five with the Wolverines back in the day in basketball.
Yeah.
I mean, because we know Power. It's around Buffalo. Power is going to sign as soon as they get eliminated. Right. Beniers is probably going to Seattle. Yep. I'm not sure. Maybe Hughes to. I
think Hughes will go to New Jersey too. I do.
Johnson's going to.
So. Ken Johnson will go to Columbus.
Maybe Portillo with the Sabres. They're trying to get Devin Levi out of Northeastern. The Leafs they signed Aberzies on the weekend, and they're probably going to sign Nye. So the
Flyers signed Noah Cates.
The trend is these guys are going to come out.
Yeah, Brisson's going to Vegas.
Yeah, but again, the one thing I posted in a private group that I'll say on this show is, after seeing as much as I've seen of Owen Power, but then also seeing him live again late in the season, he's going to be better than Aaron Ekblad. Like, he's really special. And Aaron Ekblad, I think the world of. He's going to be better than Aaron Ekblad. He's a better skater.
And you want your answer, Ek, to who's the best bad team? It's probably Buffalo, because you put Owen Power with Dahlin, with Yoki Haru on defense and Samuelson. They've got a good core of young defensemen. It's going to take them a few years. I'm not sure about Luukkonen, but they have Levi and Portillo in the pipeline, and then they have the forwards that they have. Could give them a couple years. They're going to be
they'll be dangerous soon.
Yeah.
And Jack Quinn's ripping it up in the AHL.
Finally able to have that hope, though. I mean, they've had that hope before. I don't.
Yeah, but they haven't had this many.
They haven't had this talent level.
No.
Right.
And they honestly have not had I give a lot of respect to Don Granato and what he's been able to do in terms of developing the players and developing sort of a team camaraderie. I think that is going to be a benefit to them going down the line. You even said it early in the year that he was a good developmental coach, and it's been proven. I think that's why they're playing.
He's a perfect coach for them right now. Will he be the coach when they're really good? Will he be the guy will he be the perfect coach then? I don't know. But
he'll be the coach next year.
He will be the coach next year. Yes. So let's go through these bad teams for a second, and I'm going to try to give you my one sentence on each of them, and then we can decide: is it possible they make the playoffs next year? That's my question to you. Are they? Who's the best? Who do you think the best of them is? And is it possible they make the playoffs? So let's start with Columbus, who's minus 30. Like I said, minus 25 is my determination for bad teams, and that really is the cutoff point because. You go above, like the worst of the bad teams is on this list is minus 29, and then after that really there's nobody in the minus teens even, like everybody's closer. So minus Columbus minus 30. Columbus, watching them play, still what they were, hardworking and actually good goaltending.
Can Columbus make the playoffs as they're currently constituted next year? No, but if they, they've been rumored to be in on Chychrun. If they could get Chychrun to come in and be the Seth Jones replacement, they have the goaltending and Merzlikins. I think they need to add a little offense, but if they could solidify their defense and add a scorer and re-sign Line, that's a lot of ifs, but I think that it's possible.
That is a pathway to do it.
Kevin, your thoughts on Columbus?
I think the problem that Columbus has is what division they're in. It's not like these other teams are going to get weaker.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So that's the problem. I mean, I'm bullish on that team, but that division's tough. So, you've got to, they not only have to get a little bit better, they got to get a lot better.
They got to get a lot better. They got to have a lot of scoring. I do like if Chychrun will be a fantastic pickup for him. I do think that's a strong possibility from what I've been told. Detroit at minus 64, Kevin. They have, of course, next year you have the great defenseman you've all been waiting for is going to arrive next year to the great defenseman you already have.
They're a long way, although they're going to be significantly better next year because they've got a couple of guys in addition to Edmondson.
Right.
They've got Elmer Soderblom, who That's 22.
He's a monster.
Yeah, he's 6'8". He has a chance to become the first basketball player sized forward to have an impact.
He's got good hands. He really does.
Yeah, he's got great hands. I mean, that's his number one. Like he's 6'8", plays a 6 foot game. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like he's not a physical player.
How long
He's
is
bigger
his
than
stick
Brian
allowed to
Boyle.
be? Like legally, how long can a stick of a 6'8" guy be? Like, is there
How long? What?
how long can his stick be? Like, I'm thinking like
It's fine. There's a couple of videos on him. I urge everyone to go look at them of some coast to coast. One coast to coast goal off a rush. He has another one where he skates around the net, comes out in front, and makes a little dipsy doodle and scores.
Yeah, I've seen those.
Yeah, he's really, really a good player. And so, but this year they just haven't shown that they have the winning culture, and I think that's going to be an issue.
Yeah, I get that.
So I would say no next year.
No for next year. All right, the Flyers, Vancouver Canucks to the East. Had they changed their coaches? All right, but
Their defense is so bad. It can only get better, but it's not going to get good enough.
Well, Russ and I talked about this on the weekend, Eck, and we wanted to mention a name that will infuriate you because we're both in the same thought process.
I'm excited, right?
That this guy will be the next coach of the Flyers, and that's John Tortorella.
Even Wayne Fish said that too when I interviewed him.
I don't think so. I think just Comcast. I don't. The culture at Comcast, I have a hard time buying it.
He's really good friends with Holmgren. They were in the USA Hockey System. Dean Lombardi was in the USA Hockey System. He's there too.
Anything could happen. I'm not saying I have any inside information.
I know. I'm not saying. We're just saying we know you would be miserable if it happened. I think the best of the worst could be the Devils because
they're next on my list.
If they patch up their problem at goalie, they bring in Hughes. He gets to play the rest of the year in the AHL. Maybe gets a couple of NHL games. He continues to look good. He's really fully recovered. I will say that, which is a worry of mine last year, but now he is. And if they were to get Johnny Gaudreau, they would make the playoffs.
Well, my issue, and that's a potential path, but my issue with New Jersey is who's the goaltender, and that's been
that's why I said they have to solve that.
Yeah,
they also are in that tough division.
If they all of a sudden Russ traded for John Gibson, then if they added a scorer like Gaudreau and they traded for a goaltender like Gibson, then I think that they could challenge Pittsburgh or Washington for a playoff spot. The people think, they're going to have all this money because Subban his contract expires. Jack Hughes's extension kicks in next year, so that all the money that they save on Subban goes right to Hughes. So, I mean, are they going to be?
He's really starting to become what he's supposed to be.
Oh yeah, no, he's a tremendous player. I just think if they even picked up a Korpisalo kind of goalie, that might be good enough.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree. Kevin, what are your thoughts on the Devils?
Well, I like the team too, and they've got a lot of good young talent coming. But I also agree with the assessment that the goaltending and we know from watching others struggle with this, it's not easy improving your goaltending.
No,
right?
It really isn't. Like if you have a good goalie, you're just not inclined to move them. So I don't know that's going to be easily resolved. Their goaltending issue, and The one thing I should have mentioned with Columbus is, there's a chance, like, what's going to happen in Pittsburgh with Letang. Like, that would be a major loss if they can't re-sign him. So,
true.
They could take a quarter step back there. So maybe there's an opening there, but they're going to be better and they're heading in the right direction. There's no doubt about it. I just don't know whether they can complete that climb or not because the Islanders are going to be better next year too.
Yeah, the Islanders are going to be better. Minus 43 would be the Ottawa Senators.
Wait, are they going to be better or are they going to just be older?
No, they're going to be better. They'll be a better team. I think if you restart,
they'll be better than what I think they showed this year. But are they playoff better? I don't know.
Well,
I don't know either. But I think there's a good chance of that. I mean,
okay, that's fair.
They have a exceptional goaltending.
Yeah.
Their defense, if it's healthy, should be fine. I think they're going to go out and replace Leddy. With the Trotz team, that's 3/4 of the battle.
Well, there are indicators out there that say that Lou is going to shake up the roster, which obviously I think makes a lot of sense because they underachieved this year. But my criticism going into the year with this team was they had a ton from Anthony Beauvillier at $4.1 million to Anders Lee at $7 million. They have 8 forwards that are making $4 million or more. They're really top heavy. And they don't. But
that's a typical Lamoriello thing to have like 8 people making $4 million or more. Like that's not like 3 people making $10 million, Mike. That's like different worlds. Like so, I think that's more like where Lou likes how he likes to do things, how he likes to build teams. Obviously, he's keeping in his re-signings. He showed that he's not going to totally break up the core. Like he re-signed some players.
Well,
that I thought he moved out.
He's not getting the bang for the buck from a lot of these. I mean, Anders Lee is not having a great year. Palmieri has been a disaster. I mean, if Lou can, move players out that are not performing. I mean, Noah Dobson's got to be re-signed. Their defense is not deep. I think some of those moves will come at the cost of maybe trading Varlamov to clear his cap space because they have Sorokin as the number 1 goaltender. But maybe
we are getting off topic because we got this is not a bad.
That's fine.
This is the Islanders. I don't think the Islanders is a bad team that can be good. I want to get to the bad teams. So the Iowa Senators minus 43.
Russ,
nope. They still have not gelled. Their goaltending is still in flux. Even if they go with Gustafsson and Forsberg next year, and they say Murray can't do it, that's still not good enough. They don't have enough quality veterans to insulate still this. And some of their young talent now is getting old too. Like Colin White's no spring chicken anymore. Like they're going to start turning over their 3, 4, 5 years ago draft guys soon.
They're talking about trading Colin White.
I know.
Pierre LeBrun was mentioning, Kent Hughes was his agent, and there was talk about Colin White being traded to Montreal. I mean, you don't trade a player that you think is going to be really good inside your own division.
No, there's no connective tissue here, Ek. That's my problem with this team.
I tell you this, Kevin, I am becoming a Peter Forsberg, a Anton Forsberg.
Oh my God!
Oh, good for you. That's fantastic.
Thanks, I appreciate it. I mean, he has actually looked. If I've watched like 2 or 3 games in the last couple of weeks with the Senators and been really impressed. Like he makes some saves that not a lot of goalies can make. Honestly, he's got a super upside to his game that's really high. I can see why he got to the end, and I know he struggled horribly. I was there when he struggled horribly, but what are your thoughts, Kev, on Sender?
I'm with Russ. I just think this team had so much promise, and they've just suddenly stopped. I don't see that they're. We keep talking about they're acquiring picks and all that, but you got to do something with them.
Yeah,
and you got to develop them, and they haven't done that. I don't believe in their goalie. Forsberg is a fine backup goalie.
Yeah,
but I don't see him as carrying the load.
But I know there's been a lot of criticism of DJ Smith, and sort of the fact that DJ Smith has failed where Don Granato has succeeded. They have all this young talent in Kachuk and Stützle, and now they've signed Jake Sanderson, and they really haven't developed into a cohesive unit. They have games where they'll score a bunch of, and they have a lot of talent, but then they just disappear for.
I don't even think Smith's a bad coach, Mike. That's the funny thing about it. I think that is also a franchise that has a hard time getting a great coach, getting a big name. They don't want to go there.
And remember, a couple years ago, this was the offseason that Eugene Melnyk said, I will start spending money when it's to lock up our core guys. They're not spending money. They're talking about trading Colin White, because they could save almost $5 million.
I'll say this about them: they're still fun to watch.
Nobody's saying that. Listen,
I'm going to sit there and say that that they haven't. That I expect them.
They have players. I like Stützle. I like Batherson. I like Formenton. There's a lot of guys to like there.
A funner player to watch.
Connor Brown's a really good player.
A more fun player to watch than Kachuk. Honestly, Kachuk is absolutely.
Well, he's awesome.
He's a blast to watch. He's worth the price of admission. He's worth paying to go see. He is going to give you something every night that is like a part of his soul.
Here's
that is something that we don't see. That there's like maybe 5 hockey players in the NHL that do that.
Here's the example of what would, if I was a Senators fan, would drive me crazy. Nick Paul, who's played really well for them for the last couple of years, was making less than $2 million, having a good year. They tried to negotiate with him to get a new deal. They couldn't get the deal done. They traded him to Tampa. Yep. Okay.
But
he was not asking for like $5 million.
Who'd they get for him, Mike? Who'd they get for him?
They got Matthew Joseph.
And Matthew Joseph on that team really looks good.
Well, okay. I mean, but Nick Paul's that's a step down for Matthew Joseph, getting him. It is. Look, the end of the day, their defense still stinks, and now Shabbat's starting to get hurt. What if all of a sudden Shabbat starts having trouble?
Why did they get Matthew Joseph? Because Matthew Joseph makes this year.
I know. I get that.
And next year he's an RFA, and they can sign him and qualify him and get him for under $1 million.
What impresses me about Matthew Joseph, honestly, is like, you come, like what we joked the day on the trade deadline. I'm like, oh man, he goes from Tampa to Ottawa. What a horrible. He looks really happy in Ottawa, and
because he's getting an opportunity. But what I'm talking about is not Matthew Joseph, because he's a fine player. I'm talking about them keeping a player and them not having the wherewithal and the will to re-sign Paul because he was asking for a little more money. This is a team that's got $25 million in cap space, and they won't spend an extra $1 million to get a guy who's played well for them.
All right, moving on.
Wait, hold on. I mean, we should mention the one big positive is that they signed Jake Sanderson to a contract. So that's a big deal. Maybe that'll start to change their fortunes. I'm very high on them, so I'll give them that.
Yeah, he's a major difference maker as well.
He is. He is.
He can change their fortunes easily.
I have a feeling they're going to be a force next year. I don't know why. But maybe I'm wrong. Montreal. Kevin, why don't you start with Montreal? Marty St. Louis, who's going to be back, it looks like.
Yeah, and he should be. He's done a good job with that group. But it's not hopeless there because they have a goaltender. They've got a very valuable asset. We don't know where his game's going to be. But they've got some younger players that are pretty good, but they've got Petrie that they've got to figure out what to do. And so I think next year is going to be a sort out year. They're not going to make playoffs next year. They got to sort it out where they're at next year.
I mean, I'm still not convinced. Nobody knows what's going to happen with Price. I mean, he could. The worst case scenario is he could retire.
Feels like he's going to retire in my gut. I don't know why. I just have that.
I think he's going to play before the end of the season. I do.
Really?
I think he's going to get on the ice and play a game or two. I just have that feeling.
His career mentally, he almost has to do that. Like if I was his friend or advisor, I'm like, you gotta.
I agree.
You cannot go on off season because if he goes into off season without playing, it's gonna be really hard to start that engine up. Really.
Yes. Caulfield has completely turned it around under St. Louis. He's got 13 goals since he was hired. Suzuki is playing much better. But to what Kevin said, they're probably going to try to trade Gallagher. They're probably going to try to trade Josh Anderson. They're definitely going to try to trade Petrie. This is a rebuild. They
did sign Jordan Harris too, who I like, a very talented defenseman. That's a big sign for them.
This is a significant rebuild. So they're not even, I don't think the teams in the Atlantic, Detroit and Buffalo are pointing up, and Montreal and Ottawa are pointing down.
I don't think Montreal's pointing down. I think Montreal will either just be slightly better or just good enough but not good enough to make the playoffs. I could see where they make a jump, especially if Price is back in net.
By pointing down, Russ, I mean they're sort of entering the rebuild as opposed to climbing back up toward the playoffs.
Yeah, but again, if Price comes in net and he looks good, that does change a lot of things quickly for them.
Well, that's
we're running out of time, but I want to do the Western Conference really quickly, kind of I don't mean to.
No, do it.
You got to do it. So Anaheim at -29. Kevin, playoff team next year?
Maybe. And I say that because their rebuild is underway, and their younger players are already their best players. Zegras and I think McTavish is going to be an impact player next year.
He's an impact guy. Yeah.
Their center position is exciting now.
Yeah.
So I like where they're at. I think their defense, although they didn't want to lose Lindholm, but they've lost those guys. But I don't think it's the end of the world. They still have Fowler. They got a lot of cap space. Drysdale is going to be better next year.
And there's talk, Kev, of Manson coming back. Exactly. So
for all those reasons, I think I think they could be in the playoffs. And Gibson's still a quality goalie. I mean, I know people have pointed out that maybe they should trade him, but
Nah.
I think they're kind of closer to the Rangers than the Maple Leafs and the Red Wings. And by that, I mean, they're not doing a complete from the bottom rebuild. Tear down. They're just trying to, go with younger players. And, they just had Troy Terry step up this year. So they got a lot.
And I'll give you another name. Once, Minnesota's out of it, Blake McLaughlin's a really good player for Minnesota. I've liked him since the USHL. He's fast. He's got a lot of skill. So that's another guy that they're going to bring into the fold.
I think if they keep Gibson, then they could contend for a playoff spot. But I don't understand the rumors of them trading Gibson because I think he's a great goaltender.
I didn't buy them. I don't know. I don't know.
I don't buy him either. Not if you know Pat Verbeek. So
yeah, exactly. All right. The next up would be I'm going to go to Russ on this one. San Jose at -31.
I mean, they upgraded in net.
Yeah.
They still have some guys there that could maybe make one more run. They were closer this year than we thought.
Yeah.
I'm going to say there's a chance. I do think San Jose, if they were to pick up, let's say they're the ones who pick up Dadenoff. Is his contract up, Mike, or whatever? I mean, one more year. But even if they trade for him because all of a sudden he doesn't want to be there, if they could get one more scorer and get another defenseman, if Kakinen's good, they could start to cause some problems.
There was some chatter I heard last week of them potentially buying out Vlasic because Vlasic
I could see that
has slipped so far, but the cap hit on that, I think it would be like 6 years. It would really be onerous. But the thing is, if he's sort of devolved into a bottom pairing defenseman and you're paying him $7 million, those are sort of the moves that you have to make. They re-signed Hertl. Maybe Kakinen can be the guy who is the number one. If that's the case, then they have a chance. But I think
you remember, Eklund will be there next year. That's going to be good for them. William Eklund will be a massive.
No, not you.
No, I mean that would be marginal. But William Eklund will be a massive pickup.
You don't know that I'm not William Eklund. You don't know that.
I know that you're. Well, never mind.
You're the baby daddy.
All right. So then Kevin, Chicago -50.
Yeah. They haven't done anything that I think is going to improve them for next year. I mean, I'd have to see something in the off season. I don't like what I'm hearing. That they're going to trade Kubelik and I don't know. There's no who's the goaltender. So I think they'll be more of the same.
I mean, we've heard the Taves and Kane talk, but only last week I started to hear, whoa, they're talking about trading Seth Jones. I'm like, really?
I don't buy that, but
I mean, it's a question of whether Seth Jones wants to be part of a rebuild, which we know they're going through, and that could be the case.
They do have a group of young players they could rebuild relatively quickly around.
They have to re-sign DeBrincat. They have Dotch.
They got DeBrincat and Dotch. They have to re-sign him, but they do have and they still have Patrick Kane is still a great player. So it's like it's hard to completely eliminate them in my mind.
Yeah, but people keep linking him and the Rangers, and so we'll see if the Rangers ever sort of like approach them for that.
I love when a rumor gets to this point, Russ. Yeah, well, here he's going to go to the Rangers and then sign back in Chicago, like that.
No, I know that's not going to happen.
Like that's a 2-level rumor. First off,
I know
on the Rangers, and now he's going to sign back in Chicago after he goes.
Right,
I'm a rumor person. Even I can't buy into like 2-level rumors like that.
No, all right, I don't blame you.
Next up, Seattle at -62.
Not a chance in hell.
Nope.
They're kind of in trouble a little bit.
Although I like what Francis did at the deadline. He got a bunch of draft picks, and you could flip some of those picks to get players.
They got to do the right things with that, though.
But I honestly think that it's going to be 3 or 4 years before they
finally Arizona at -67. I
have some news on Arizona.
Relegate them to the American Hockey League.
So here's some news. We'll see if the story breaks at some point, but I hear of financial issues with the Tucson Roadrunners, similar to the Coyotes, that hasn't really seen the light of day yet. We'll see if that happens. But also spoke to somebody who has a very good source as far as on the board of Tempe, and it aligns with what I heard from the construction people down there, and that is they don't like that ownership group. That thing is dead on arrival. and they're going to announce it in the next 30 days. So probably like mid to late April, we're going to probably hear that's a big fat no to Tempe.
And if
what does that mean? Does that mean that this team's out of there?
No, that means they're renting Arizona State, and they're going to have to make the NHL is going to have to make a decision what they're going to do after the 1 year at Arizona State.
Assuming what Russ is saying is true, and I will. It's too late, Kev, to think that they're going to play someplace else next season. But if Tempe doesn't pass it and they have no building with a shovel in the ground, I think they play 1 year at Arizona State and they pave the ground to go someplace else, whether it be Quebec City or Houston. It makes no sense. If they don't have a building, why the hell would they stay there?
Yeah, no, I mean I agree with you. I'm sure we know the league's history with Arizona. They'll give you all the chances in the world, but sooner or later you're going to run out of chances, and
right,
there's nowhere else to go. And this has just been handled so poorly that it's it's hard not to see this team ending up elsewhere. And they're going to end up what really the league is trying to avoid. When you move a team, you want to have something in place like Winnipeg, where it's you could have a season ticket drive and it'll work instantly.
Oh, one more thing, Kev. This same person who had the source said that a week or two ago, the owner of the Rockets flew down there and had discussions about the Coyotes. So maybe he is going to change his mind to own the team. Maybe.
Yeah, that would be helpful, but they just don't like the idea of having all the weekends going to the Rockets and all that stuff. So we'll have to see what happens there.
Yeah, I agree, Kevin. Without being able to sell season tickets ahead of time, without being able to really set it up, there was a whole campaign for Vegas and for Seattle,
right?
That was like 3 years in the making. Like it was really way. Yeah. It was even longer for Seattle. It was like 4 years in the making because of COVID.
True.
But we've seen. Remember the season ticket drive for Hamilton when there was a talk about moving a team to Hamilton. That sprung up in about a month.
Well, obviously you can move a team to Quebec, right? And you don't have to worry about ticket sales. That's fine.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to do that, though.
I don't think they're going to do that either with this team. I think that
it's Houston.
They could move another team to Quebec in the future, but I don't think it would be this one.
It's Houston. It's going to be Houston if it is.
Probably would be Houston because I did talk to somebody about who would move to the Western Conference, and if that was to happen. And honestly, I heard a really surprising name, which really kind of shocked me. That would be possible that Carolina would move to the Western Conference.
It won't be Detroit.
But putting Carolina in the Central Division, which would be, I don't know. I mean, someone told me, and it's kind of true. In a way, it is true that Carolina has been there for such a long time, honestly, at this point, but has not developed any real rivals. Like who are the Carolina?
Yeah, I couldn't name you who their rival is. That's fair.
Isn't it weird for a team to be there that long? There's not like
their rival is NASCAR.
No, but I mean
NC State.
It could be argued that the closest thing they had to a rival was Detroit. When they played them a couple times, right, Kevin?
Well, it was because of the ownership. Their owners were rivals.
Right, the ownership, right? That makes something too, right? But they haven't developed a rivalry with really anybody. I mean, I guess maybe Tampa a little bit, but they're not even in their division either, right? I mean, who are the rivals? Think about it. It's kind of crazy. So
maybe playoff series with Washington, but that didn't really.
I mean, that's the closest team to them, maybe geographically. So I don't know where this is going, but maybe you could move them to the Central and be okay. They had some pretty good games against the Predators. I've always thought the Predators.
I'm sure Dundon would love it.
Yeah, there you go. All right, well, that's all the time we have for today. Everybody, thanks so much for watching us, and enjoy the games tonight. We'll be back again tomorrow. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey, so enjoy it. We got a bunch of stuff happening, a bunch of games.